I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well today. Today is a special day. It's always special when I've got my colleague, W.D. Foster Grant, riding shotgun with me today. We're talking about the creative process, about poetry, about making books, about communicating, about the spirit of it, the value of it, the importance of it, and how we need to be both aware to tap into our own creative potential, but to recognize the massive amount of talent and production around us and support that, engage it. Well, before I bring WD on, I want to invite you, wherever you are on the internet, to support and join this conversation. We're streaming across two YouTube platforms, two or three Facebook platforms, across LinkedIn and Facebook, as I said, and Twitter. So wherever you are, before the hour, do me a favor, go over to uh, YouTube/Insight News MN and subscribe, like, and share. We're trying to grow our subscriber base. It's free, uh, but we want to get to where we have 1,000 subscribers. We're about 560 or 500 something right now. So we got a ways to go. You can help us get there. We ask you to help us. If you like this conversation, be a part of it by helping it grow. Also, if you like it, if you want to be on the conversation, we want you on the conversation. Why? This is really about us having, direct contact, interesting, engaging conversation where we say and share our feelings, our thoughts, our speculation, our hopes, our fears, right? And do that in the comfort of not being judged, but being expected to be profound, to be clear, and to be positive, and to be solution oriented. Though we don't always meet that bar, but that's a desire. Well, with that, again, uh, go to YouTube/Insight News MN, subscribe, like, and share. And if you want to be on the program, drop us a note in the comments section. We might be able to pull you into today's program live. We certainly want to connect with you for future programs as well. WD, Happy New Year, brother. Good to see you again. Welcome back to the conversation, edition 2024.
Good to see you too, Al. Great to be here.
Well, how was your holiday so far?
Well, the holidays were full. I guess there's sometimes some differences because, it's probably the first holidays I've had when my mother wasn't here. But we keep her in spirit and in memory and love.
Okay. Before the show, we talked about the challenge of handling the memorial items, the property and things. So at some point in time in the future, I want to connect back with you to talk about how you and your brothers and sisters have handled just whatever inheritances there were and estate issues. That's something that we don't talk about enough. And I want to say that uh, I've had friends of mine discuss what might happen with our possessions that we've treasured and hoarded for years. The joke of it being likely that our kids are going to take a U-Haul and dump it, but that's something for another show down the road. Uh,
Mhm.
Today we're talking about poetry, and we're talking specifically about a Twin Cities poet, Tiara Nolen. She's known as Lady TCB. And let me tell you about her. She's been writing poetry for over 20 years. She started as a preteen, initially wrote poems that reflected her love for music, and she wrote them as an outlet, along with journaling. She grew up on the Southside of Chicago and then later transplanted to Twin Cities and suburbs here in Minnesota. Uh, Her outlook uh, and experiences as an African American in different environments, meeting different people, uh, have helped shape her and inspire her work. So uh, she first made her poetry public just before starting college. She initially started performing as a spoken word artist in local open mics. She's since performed for special occasions and community events and is still open to expanding her reach. Sister Tiara Nolen, welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. Lady TCB, welcome. Happy New Year
Thank
to you.
thank you. Happy New Year to you as well.
Great,
So
great. I need to mention to start off with the point of this conversation is in part your book,
correct.
and show the book, so that people know that we're talking about this work, Live to Grow, Breaking Cycles. Let's jump right in. What's the meaning of the book and what's in the book?
Yes. So Live to Grow is a concept. It actually came out of a poem I wrote called Live to Grow. And it's actually my life motto, which is Live to Grow because growth is beautiful, which is a line from the poem. It was one of my first tattoos that I got. And just basically the concept that life always changes and you should always be striving to grow. There's always things from our past, our present, that kind of push us forward into the future. And so Live to Grow was birthed out of initially just wanted to put my poetry out there. So there's actually a prelude to it, and that was just a collection of poems. And so then I did want to expand the series, and so Live to Grow Breaking Cycles is the first where I'm really delving into like a conversation type piece. Um, when I do poetry, I want to engage you as though we're sitting down having a talk. We're actually seeing eye to eye. I may be pulling on some things that are tugging at your heartstrings or tugging at your thought processes. And so Live to Grow, I actually go through three different sections. There's I didn't raise you, streaming from parents. How did they raise us? How did they perceive that we should turn out? And then having that concept in the back of their mind, like, I didn't raise you like that. And it
Hmm.
may be you're misbehaving, or it may be, you went into a career field they didn't expect, or you get into religion, and a lot of people have started to question what they believe and why they believe it, and wanted to have a belief strictly for themselves to truly understand, or just various things where it causes a parent to say, I didn't raise you that way. And it
Great.
may not be a negative thing. Into body goals. There's media wants to tell us socially and interpersonally, your body has to look this way. Men should be fit, men should be tall, women should have this figure. African Americans shouldn't wear their hair in their natural state. Native American men shouldn't have long hair. Just all those different things. And then the last chapter where I'm speaking and giving poetry is Put Me In, Coach. A lot of times, as people of color, we're counted out when it comes to education, when it comes to corporate America and things of that nature. And I always end the book with reflective sections where you can kind of delve into things yourself. So this book particular meant a lot to me because I'm sharing a little bit of my life and growth throughout things, and then also poetry to pair with it. So you get something where, and I'm talking to you as if you're sitting right there with me. And that was a big thing for me, is to not be talking at people, but almost like you're sitting at the table with the conversation. How I opened the book, welcome to the table.
Well, show us what you mean. Let's open the book and walk us through it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the feeling and the experience.
Yep. So I start off by explaining what, again, made me want to write the book. And so it says, we always think of breaking cycles to be for those deep, dark moments that seep into our lives and sometimes overtake, some would say hijack, our choices and life's experiences. I can say that although I have had my share of trauma, some of my experiences and exposure to the experiences of others were not all necessarily traumatic cycles to break. Sometimes they have been unhealthy on one hand, while others have been roadblocks. I initially started thinking of the concept of this book to break the cycle of issues that can arise in parent child relationships. The book was going to be titled I Didn't Raise You, and speak on all the ways our parents, myself, friends, and others have raised us and placed expectations on us and our life path. How the decisions we have made, good, unhealthy, or indifferent, have countered or strayed from that path. In the time since I first started writing this book, 2018 or 2019, I have gone through a series of experiences and healing directly and as a person from the outside looking in with my close friends and loved ones that have caused me to want to expand the umbrella of this book. I found that in so many ways we are raised, and what we have experienced in life have created various cycles that we may need to break. So that's the opening.
Hmm.
And one of the biggest poems for the first section, I Didn't Raise You, is Chosen Path. which I spoke on. And so it's chosen path. They told you that you could be anything in life, told you that you could have a pick of choices. As a child, you believed them until childhood was through and you stepped into adulthood. You discovered that before you were only two paths, the one that they had chosen for you and the one that would allow you to make your own choices. Now that the time had come to make a decision, you found roadblocks on the path that was meant to be your own. As you were pushed off, if not dragged, to the path that they had chosen for you. Bricks filled with dreams they had yet to fill, or shoes forced on your feet, hand me downs that they wanted you to feel, maybe even a combination of the two. Toes curled in shoes not custom made for you, feet sore walking a path that is not yours to walk, your career path chosen, even if nobody is there to help you along. Your love interest chosen, even if you have no interest in the type of person they find to be acceptable for you, if they ever even feel that anyone can be accepted for you. Your behaviors and mannerisms that you find to come naturally are deemed inappropriate. The words of your tongue found to be in need of silencing. Chosen path filled with their expectations, void of your heart's desire, a flame put to them to let you know that they have no place in the path that has been chosen for you. A chosen path, not fully chosen by you, not allowed to come to any conclusion on your own, belittled into believing that maybe you are one only capable of minor decision making, only allowed to feel intelligent or mature when your choices align with theirs. Only they are right, right? Chosen path, yet heaven forbid you ever take a moment to toss away the shoes and walk away. Then you're fighting them and you find flaws in them. Your decision to not walk the chosen path says that you hate them, of course, that you have not chosen to love them, that you must despise them and resent the upbringing, that you do not appreciate the sacrifices made for you. Don't you owe them your all, your last, as they feel that they have given to you? Your individuality isn't to be known to the world. The harder you try to walk towards your own path, the stronger the tide. Their thoughts they do not hide, though they expect you to shove down your true dreams and adopt theirs. Know that your true peace comes when you take off running down your own path. Pick up healing along the way, release forgiveness, sometimes maybe even release the bonds to those you love in order for you to better love yourself. Forgive yourself for not choosing your path sooner. Your joy will come as you discover the way to custom make your own shoes to guide you to walk in, to stand in the soil you have cultivated and watch the growth all around you. As your journey continues, winding, moving, changing, hills and valleys, they are your chosen path. Just continue forth and know that your path has not been walked, as it is your own, so you can create what it is to come. Reform, redirect, sculpt new dreams, learn new hobbies, gather all the information you need as you determine through your decisions what makes for a healthy life for you. Go forward on your chosen path, the one you choose for you.
Woo.
Wow.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's nice. So I mean, as you're reading it, I'm just seeing pictures of all the people in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you twist it and you turn it and you twist it and you turn it
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, and everything brings up a memory, a story, a feeling, an experience. And for me, it's you're hitting me, maybe, and you obviously intended as the person looking at the walk, but I'm also feeling the accusation of the person that's blocking somebody else
Yep.
from discovering their own path.
Right.
Where am I in this equation? And what you're saying is nobody is off the hook.
No.
Everybody
Yep.
got an answer, right?
Right.
That's right. I look at that too, because when you think about it, said, yeah, how so much of our lives have been based on the expectations, maybe of our parents, maybe of relatives or people, in school and the workplace about, okay, who do they want to be? But then you have to turn around and think about, and if you hit about it, what about the expectations that I'm putting on my own child? Even
Mm-hmm.
when he was just barely out of the hospital, what kind of expectations are going on in my mind? And that makes it powerful that you're saying no one is off the hook for that.
Right.
So Lady TCB, talk about, let's sit in that for a minute. As
Yeah.
what called you to make these considerations, to examine where the language would take you?
Yeah. So, I mean, even in my own life, I grew up where my parents divorced when I was young. I was 10 years old when they officially divorced. And my parents were a little bit different. My mother grew up the youngest of 13 with a mother who was very religious. I tell people, if you think of the mom from Soul Food, the grandmother, that was my grandmother. She was sweet. She was personable. Everyone loved her. When she passed away, it ripped, a hole in everyone's heart. And so my mother being the baby, she wanted her mom be to find joy in her no matter what. She was the youngest. By that point, many African American women, you're raised in the South, you transition to Chicago. She was the 13th child, my mother was. And so at that point, you're tired. There's no telling what all she had been through in her life. And so as the youngest, you just want her time because you're finally, you may get that one-on-one as the older siblings move out. But unfortunately for her, the older siblings are so much older that they have children around her age. And they're coming over and they're getting her time. And so for her, it was whatever my grandmother wanted, that's who she was. Because that meant, love and affection and things like that. And then my father grew up where there's a little bit more freedom. He's only the second oldest of 5 as far as his mother's children. And so the expectation was a little different. My mother expected, whatever her mind was, like you said, you come out the hospital with that baby, this is, you have that dream. And I'm a mother as well. And so the thing that I wanted to do is not do that to my son. Like we all want the best. It's like, what can I do to make sure he can choose his own path? So growing up where, when my mom was like, you have to go to church, you have to go to school, you come straight home, you can't hang out with the kids that listen to secular music, you can't do this, any music I knew of the 90s and the early 2000s because I had a radio and headphones. So I'm listening to the radio, and as soon as she would come in, snatch it off, or I'm switching to the CD player so she doesn't know, so I have the contemporary gospel music. So I grew up on Fred Hammond and the Winans and all of that.
Sure.
But I'm sneaking. Your kids are going to sneak and try to figure out what's going on anyway. You go into a secular school. And my father was a little bit more, choose what you want to do, but then he had his expectations. And so when you get to a point where all that pressure hits you, and for me, it hit my senior year of college. I didn't get to graduate because there's a pressure of what does this person expect? What does that person expect? And then trying to do your own thing, wanting to be your own person, but not really being allowed to because all these other expectations and preconceived notions are put on you. And over time, eventually I had to realize, okay, I have to break away from that, and have my parents realize, I have integrity, I have respect, I give honor. Those are the core values of what you put on your children. The outside thing, those should not matter. If they want to dye their hair red, put an earring in their nose, get tattoos, some of the greatest people to everyone else are the ones who are doing that versus the ones who have a completely blank canvas. And so when me and my husband got married and you're coming together and for various reasons, no parent is perfect. None of us are going to get it right. Not everything right. We're looking at how were we raised and how do we take the good pieces and how do we take what affected us so strongly to where we had to do a lot of unpacking and try not to put that on our child. And granted, there's still going to be things, we're still learning. We're only one of the first generations to start doing that and stepping away. One of the first generations of African Americans who can not necessarily be under Jim Crow and what was the slow aftermath of that. Many of our parents, even though Jim Crow supposedly ended in the 60s, there's still the ripple effect of that in the 70s and the 80s. So, in the crack epidemic.
And the 2020s,
in the 2020s. So it's like their survival and mindset wasn't on how do I break the cycle of what happened in post-traumatic slave and everything else. It was how do I just survive, go to work and bring home a check and not get beat up on the way or not get beat up at the job or what have you. So it's like we're one of the first generations who is trying to, what are these cycles we're breaking from those, just the words we say to our children, not realizing how they impact later. Where there's a moment of being heated with someone else and then our child ends up facing that. That's where it's like, okay, choosing your own path, whether it's religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, career path, personal choices. Like I say, something as simple as getting your ears pierced, something as simple as tattoos, all those minute things that could cause a parent to really be like, I didn't raise you to do that, So that's where that birthed out of is just all these different things where I have friends and different people that are trying to, break away from that. We still love and respect, we still appreciate, but it's like you have to allow that person to walk their own path.
On a personal level, what is your relationship with words and with language? And I don't mean what you learned in school,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean in the most private and personal moments, what do words mean to you, for you, mean in you? What's your relationship with language and words?
Words mean a lot to me. As a kid, I was that kid who would go to the Carter G. Woodson Library and pull out 5 to 6 books a week, chapter books, and wanted to read what people had to say. A lot of the books that I was drawn to, even if they were fiction, were about people's lives. I wanted to know how people think. I wanted to know how people understood things. What were people's experiences in order to have a better understanding of the world around me. And as a child, I didn't realize that was what I was doing, but over time I did. Music is very impactful. Like I said, I grew up with a mother who was very strict as far as the type of music I could listen to, but that didn't negate the fact that with my father, I grew up on, Stevie Wonder. I grew up, I knew the Temptations. I knew some of the music of the time, that I was growing up in, but I also knew a lot of the classics and had a love for that. We have a joke in my family on my dad's side. If your child doesn't love Stevie, you brought the wrong baby home. So it's like what those words mean. So even as a teenager, listening to certain songs, I paid attention to the lyrics. So it was like, even if it was popular for everybody to be, into what was being said, I was breaking it down and people would tell me, well, you're looking too deep into it. I'm like, no, you're not looking deep enough. Like, say what you mean and mean what you say. And so originally, like I said in my bio, I started off writing. I would journal because I just wanted to remember everything. I'm big on remembering things and what history means and not losing your past and what people did before you. And then I wanted to write songs, but unfortunately, the singing gift skipped my generation. So I didn't have that. And so over time, I started to become more aware of poetry. I became aware of what at the time they were calling conscious hip hop. So when Common came out, when he was Common Sense, he's from Chicago. He was one of the first people I saw as a 10-year-old at the Black Women Expo. And I'm like, this is hip hop without cussing, at that phase of his life. Now, granted, he had music before music out, but in that period, in 1999, the music he was putting out or the song that I heard was different. And so hearing the flow, and you had the Fugees at the time, you had your Lauryn Hills, you had your Jill Scotts and your NDRE. So it's like those types of music resonated with me because it was storytelling. It was a lot of the music. When I go back and think about what were my top artists, and even now that I prefer, it's a story to it. There's something to it. Even with hip hop before, there was the greatest rappers and artists to me, musicians have a story, whether it's blues, hip hop, R&B, soul, funk. A story to it is always going to be lasting. They're going to have those other songs to get you up and dancing, but sometimes even in those, especially the classics, there's a story. That's the biggest thing. What words are to me is the story and how they interconnect people.
I would also like to ask that because to say words, I am one of those persons that definitely said that classic movies and also like a lot of classic artists and stuff, there's a story, and that's why they endure the test of time. Also, the fact that you're looking at our tradition is an oral tradition, which preceded us so far as spoken word as well as with rap and stuff. So in that context, tell us more about your mentors that were there to guide you along the way, because you do talk about them in your book.
Yep. So honestly, in the grander scheme of things, I've had a lot of mentors overall in various facets of life. But as far as writing, one of the first, I guess you could say, in a professional or educational sense, that really encouraged my writing was Dr. Todd Lawrence at the University of St. Thomas. And so when I first met him doing this program called Real Project, St. Thomas had for incoming students of color. It was a 6-week program you did in the summer before your freshman year started. So you had to be accepted to the university and already had committed to enrolling. And so you would have like preliminary class, there were a little bit of math, English class, work study job to kind of get like a small taste of college life before you got into college. It was actually the year that the bridge collapsed. We were actually on the event when that happened. But he, the feedback he gave to my writing in high school, I I got some feedback, but a lot of times I was met with you're not following the guidelines. I hated writing cover pages. I hated writing outlines because that's not what type of writer I am. Like you said, our culture is orators. So I'm going to write and I'm going to flow. I'm not going to pre think about 5 different areas I'm going to hit on. I may know somewhat, but I'm just going to flow with it. And so he was one of the first where he didn't care if I wrote an outline or not. He just gave me the feedback on what the context of what I was writing, not so much the technical aspects. I tell people all the time, yes, English is my first language, but if you tell me why a period belongs here before, I can't tell you. I may look at it and tell you it flows a little funky, throw this type of punctuation in there, but I don't stick to the rules. Even when I write poetry, you learn about haikus and different things like that, and it's like I don't stick to learning those rules because I don't fit into those boxes. So having him as a professor, and then when I got into doing spoken word as an artist and meeting people, for example, at Voices Merging used to be hosted at the U of M for a number of years, and getting feedback from other people because their open mics weren't just for college students. There were other people who came in and were older or had graduated or were in different fields in the art industry throughout the Twin Cities, giving feedback and giving those pros. So it's like getting out there and putting my words out there and then having people speak to that meant a lot. So, like I said, I don't necessarily direct any one mentor over another, but I would say Dr. Lawrence was one of the first who critiqued what I had to just simply write based on the content versus the sticking to the rules of grammatics and things.
So when you write, how do you approach the page? Uh, 2 questions. One,
Mhm.
are you a spoken word? Are you a rapper, singer as well? Does spoken word include singing for you, or is it reciting poetry? That's number one. And then, do you improvise? Are you the
So,
artist that writes everything down, or do you flow from the top of your head and channel the experience of the moment?
so singer, as I stated before, I didn't get that gift. I was not blessed. Like my mother and certain ones have it. My aunts on my dad's side were blessed. It completely skipped me. You will only catch me singing in my car or in the shower. Um, but as far as improvisation, the way I write, as far as what comes to me, it literally can be anything. I hear a phrase or I have a thought about something that's happening. I used to write in class a lot in high school. It was my outlet during class. Like I was not
Mm,
paying attention. I'm writing, or I would hear a kid say something like, "My mom didn't give me $50 this week." I'm like, "My mom doesn't even have $50 to spare, and you're worried about your mom not giving you $50, and you
Mhm.
are driving a Hummer that you don't have to
Mhm.
pay anything for."
mm,
So things just come to me when it comes to writing, but when it comes to improvising on stage, I will say I do some. I go up there with a piece,
mhm,
but it typically may not always be the same. If I go up there and I'm doing it from memory,
mhm,
um, I'm going to blank on was written, and I'm
mhm,
going to improvise because I know the concept of what I wrote because I
mhm,
recited it enough times
mhm,
to know the whole poem. But once I get up there, yes, it is going to free flow. I'm going to fill out the crowd and what's being said, and probably throw some things in there where if you go pick up a print copy of it, no, it's not the same.
different from that. Yeah.
It's the beginning may be there, the
Yeah.
middle, few pieces in the end, but it's not going to
Mhm,
be the exact same copy unless I literally read it.
mhm,
But if I did it by memory, there's no guarantee it's going to be the exact same
mhm,
repetition or anything.
mhm. And how does that make you feel? Do you fear that you might not do the thing, or does it give you a sense of freedom? And are you confident that whatever? So here's the thought. When I speak,
Hmm.
I go back to my grandmama's Bible teaching. They used to tell me that that the Lord told Moses or Aaron, one of them, don't worry about what you're going to say. Just show up, open your mouth, and I'll put the words in your mouth. So when I go to talk now, that's my attitude. I mean, whether I've done research or not, I operate from the spirit, the idea that the Spirit has created this moment, and that however I show up, and whatever I have to say is what's supposed to be said at the moment. How does that relate to you?
It resonates. When I first started performing, I would be so afraid to forget what I had to say, because growing up, speaking before people started, from my aunt having her own after school program on the Southside of Chicago. So every summer would have a talent and fashion show. And by me being her niece, I had to recite poetry. I had to do a skit, do cheerleading, model in 3 sets, so I had to remember everything verbatim. So doing my own work, I felt that same way initially. And then after time, it got to a point where one time I went up there and I forgot part of it, and I just free flowed. And it went well. And so for me, it got to a point where it's like, okay, if I memorize the majority of it and feel confident in it, then I'm good. I can go on stage, I can free flow it. I always pray mentally before I perform, to God, the ancestors, and everybody, for me to remember what I need to remember, for me to be clear, for me to say what I need to say, and then just go from there. Now, granted, while I'm up there, physically, my heart is racing the whole time, even though I've been doing it for a number of years. But once it's done and having people come up to me, there was once, I think the greatest moment for me was when I did an event that Nikki Giovanni was at St. Thomas, and they had a couple of us artists do things, and it was open to the public. And there were several mothers there. And I say mothers because I grew up in a Baptist church, so you call older women mothers. And they came up to me and they told me, daughter, I'm proud of you, this, and that, and the things they had to say. And they had never seen me before in life. And so to have that adoration, I had it from my peers, but to have it from elders that never met me, who didn't know me from birth, where they're just encouraged me because they love me. But to be complete strangers and say, baby, you're making me proud, this, and that, it was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm on the right path. I have the acceptance and, the honor and gratitude from generations cross-wide.
So I'm loving some of the words you're using, the language you use, the word generations, and you use the word elders. It tells me that you are sensitive to the ancestors, and that you have a place for ancestors to be present in your today, and that the future that you're making is a future that acknowledges the legacy and the fact that their role has never ended. It remains vital and alive, and you are one of the vessels through which they express the intent and the desire and the good that they seek for humanity. But you are their vessel for that. Am I on point here so far?
You are. As we said before, my great grandmother. So I grew up blessed enough to meet. We're given 8 great grandparents. I was blessed to actually meet 4 of them. I think 4 or 5. And so one of them that played the most integral role was one of my paternal great grandmothers. And she lived, according to her birth certificate, we thought she only lived to be 101. Well, she doesn't have a birth certificate. Let me back that up. She had a piece of paper from school. But over time and doing the math and doing research, we figured she probably was 105 or so. So she was mentally competent.
Probably born when? Probably born when? What was her birth year?
Probably born in 1913 or 1915.
Okay.
And so for us, we had this woman who was born in Alabama, transplanted to Chicago in the early 50s, no, probably late 40s, somewhere in there. She owned a home and different things like that, and who she was, and hearing, she didn't always talk a lot about her past, but when she would share those nuggets, I remember most specifically, and it was funny because she was a woman who said whatever was on her mind. Mind you, at that point, you have seen Jim Crow, you have seen Martin Luther King killed, you have elected your first Black president when people didn't even want to acknowledge your existence on this census back in 1920. And we were watching The Help, and they were talking about maids and things. And so me and my aunts were sitting with her, and we were asking her, and as she got in her later years, she would sometimes drop little information about her past and growing up, and we would kind of pull it out of her when we could. And so one of my aunts turned and looked at her and said, "Mama, were you ever a maid?" And they called her mother because my grandmother, again, like I said, she passed away so much earlier that she stepped in as a mother for them. And she said, "Hell no, I ain't never cleaned them folks' houses." And then that's what she told us, I work for the cookie company, and this is, Fig Newtons, the crumble came from sweeping up the cookies off the floor and dumping them in the batch. And, and she had worked for a telephone company and things like that. So she would share that. But as a child, I would go to her house. She had an up down that we still own in the family. And initially, my early years.
Let me hold it. I never heard that before. Up down. That's new to me. I love
So
it. Number one.
So
I've never heard that
we
before.
call it
Just
a
now.
duplex. So we
Okay.
call it duplex, but
Okay.
it was a sex. They
Sure.
weren't side by
Sure.
side. They were up down. It's an
Right.
up down.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So,
Language is wonderful. I love it.
so she lived on the second floor, and so my early years, me and my mother, sister, and father lived on the first floor. So I went up there a lot. And then as I got older, because me and my sister initially were the only grandchildren and only great grandchildren, our time was with her. So there weren't other cousins to split that time until I was 5. And I had a cousin, but he lived in another state. So we got so much individual time with her. So she took us on a light rail. She would take us to church where we couldn't misbehave, even though we didn't go there frequent. They knew we were Miss Green's grandkids, so we couldn't cut up. The things that the family was so integrated in the church she was in, we had been part of it for 60 years, or at least she had. So it was like that history, and just being around her, she taught me how to play Uno. She helped teach me how to tie my shoes, her cooking and things like that. Even my maternal grandmother, she was still alive up until I was 10, and getting to sit with her after my parents initially split, we lived with them. And so I got a lot of one-on-one time with her that some of my cousins around my age didn't, because I lived in the home. So watching her cook and her, watching her Billy Graham, and going in there and sit with her for a minute. And then once I got bored and could sneak away, I would. But other than that, it was being able to sit under her and have that love and, different things like that. So it meant so much to me. And as I've gotten older, a lot of my elders have passed. And so I've buried quite a few, and I don't have that many left. So it means a lot to me when I see them. I've introduced my son to quite a few that are still alive, and he got to meet my great grandmother. So for her, she was meeting her first great grandchild, and there's 100 or so years between them. And she was still, like I say, vibrant enough. She's holding him, she's playing with him. He's 6 months old, he's bouncing. Everybody knows a 6-month-old is strong.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a 100-and-something-year-old woman able to hold on to him and seeing that. And even with that, I've taught my son, about her. He's seen videos of her interacting with him. So even though she passed when he was 18 months, he has a strong affinity for her, where, he looks at the pictures of them together, and has a love for her. And he asked me, what was Nana like? And what was, her brother like, who's in the picture with me? And I'm like, well, he passed years ago. I don't remember him much because I was only 4. He asked those questions even because I don't believe in not telling our children about the people that came before them, whether they got to cross paths or not, and sharing that with them gives them a need to respect who was there, not to just dismiss them because they some old person. It's, how do I honor, be around them, hear those things? It's even if what they have to say doesn't fully apply today, that presence, that being around them, all of that, it means something.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of where I was going, because I was recognizing the continuity that your life and your language and your presence represents, that it really generates, awareness about. But as you were sort of flowing in that space, I came back to the original conversation, and it must be a challenge. It must be a thing that we all have to deal with. You're connected to legacy. You're conscious of it. And at the same time, your first poem talks about, was it breaking
Choosing
cycles,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And expectations.
Yes.
And so the question of not only expectations of parents or uncles or brothers or teachers or the society, but also expectations of the culture. and of the legacy. So how does a parent and how does an artist parent, such as Lady TCB, wrestle with and do the wordsmithing necessary to say this is a thing, the need to be, the best parent you can be, and to protect the child on the one hand, but also to be true to the ancestors and all the knowledge that your experience have poured into you in a way that you don't want to be dismissed by your child as that was then, this is now, because it's not that simple. That's how I see it. I'm a generation older than you. How do you see it?
I see it that as parents, and I mentioned this in my book, we're here to guide. And when you give someone a guidebook, there's information in there. But just like when you're putting something together, you may figure out another way to do it. When we learn how to, I used to have a sewing machine as a teenager, and I took a sewing class in high school. And so I learned how to sew in one particular way. But then my mother had also originally, when I was a very little girl, taught me how to sew because I was interested in cutting up material and making design dresses for my dolls and things. So I learned a makeshift way, but then I also learned an official way by using patterns and things like that, which came full circle when I went through my great grandmother's days and found old McCall things. And my family actually wants to give me her old sewing machine. That's a story for another day. But taking those concepts of there's a formal way of doing things, there's a way of figuring things out on your own. There's a way of taking what you've been taught and figuring things out. Even something as simple as doing hair. My mom knew how to do some things. I've learned how to do a lot of other things. And in parenting, I have that same view. I may show you a way, but I'm not going to stop you from doing another way. It's always on the tip of our tongue to grab them, like, no, do it this way.
Right.
We don't want them to do it that way, but we have to learn to, if it's not going to kill them.
Right. Yeah.
Not necessarily the phrase of if it's not going to hurt them, because we can't prevent all hurt. If it's not going to kill them, allow them to find different paths, whether it's playing or different things. I remember my son was 2 years old and he wants to climb on the jungle gym, and he wants to climb as high as he can go, where the average 2-year-old is not going to do. And I'm looking at him in this small space, and I'm like, Mommy can't come up there and get you if you go all the way up there. And so, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. And taken in that moment was one of the small ways where, as a parent, my mother and my grandmother would have said, get your butt down. You're not going up there, because
no
in their
discussion,
mind,
no end of discussion.
it's
right?
no discussion. I can't get you, and you might break your neck. For me, I had to, in that moment, say, okay, he's only going to learn if I let him. He has to learn his own stopping point. He has to learn his own point of, I no longer feel safe. He has to learn his own, I'm stuck. And he got up there and he did his thing. And, granted, I let out a deep breath, prayed the whole time. I'm like, I don't want to take it for broken bones. But over time, just in simple things as playground, let him figure that out. There are times he'll go do something. He'd be like, I'm too afraid, I can't get up there. And he'll stop. But then me as a parent, I have to be able to, I foresee and know that this isn't going to hurt him, that he could do it. He has a potential to be able to do it, and to encourage him, but not push him. Say, baby, if you want to try it, go ahead and give it a try. Try this and that. Try to figure it out. And if you really can't, or you're really not ready, come on down. You could try again another time. Encourage him to still try again another time. And so that's kind of what I try to apply for everything. And my husband, and when we both talk, try to apply that of, we have the guidance of the ancestors, the bringing them in the kitchen and showing them how to cook, and the showing them the things that we know how to do and the way we've learned it. But also recognizing that sometimes the way we may want to teach it isn't the right way. They don't want to hear us. But also changing the narrative of actually asking our children and actually picking their brains. Because so often, even me as a child, you were told, you don't know what you're talking about, or just hear what I'm trying to say. No. But instead of trying to understand their minds, because sometimes if we can understand what they're thinking, or let them kind of talk it through, we can address what they're thinking. And then that better helps them understand us. A lot of times parents aren't saying, well, why did you do that? They're not really wanting a why you did it. They just want to know if you chose to do it or somebody told you. Once I know that, it's on. But understanding the true, what were you thinking? Okay, what made you think this or think that? And then addressing those small things to help them better understand where you're coming from. They still may dismiss us, but at least at that time, you've had that dialogue to better understand where they're coming from, and you can explain where you're actually coming from to maybe meet in the middle or come up with a whole new way about it.
I want to hear something from the middle part of your book and
Mhm.
something from the third part of your book. So do you have something in mind?
Are you talking about put me in, coach?
That was the third part, right? That was the third
Yep,
part.
that's the third part.
What's the middle part?
So the middle is body goals.
Let's talk about that. Give me a
Okay.
piece from there, and then we'll
All right.
do put me in,
So
coach.
yep. So this one has been one of my favorites so far that I plan to commit to memory. Crooked smile, man, that's wild. How dare you walk this earth with a flaw? Today we live the life that perfection can never be attained, yet we should always try to obtain it. Isn't this insanity? How can it be that we were created with diversity, yet expected to assimilate, yet accepting that it is meant to face so much hate for attempting to conform? Yet being different is argued to not be the norm. Fix your teeth, change your face, find a way to stay in the race to a place of perfection that is superficial, damn sure fictitious, crooked smile, cellulite, short hair, patchy hair, let's put on airs. Let's make the standard that to not fix what is not broken is to show that you just don't fit in. Itty bitty flat back, baby, you should inject that. Cut, snip, suction, tuck, pull, stretch, pop a pill. Find the correct catch. Find the right catch. Crooked smile. Man, that's wild. Naked face, where's your cloak? Prod and poke. Needles for hair, needles for abs. Give you cheeks, both sets if you ask. No avoidance of selection, male, female, however you present, you know you need a fix. Crooked smile, man, that's wild. How can you dare to face this world, the wild, and all the while embrace your true self? There's a remedy for freckles and also a way to get them. If you're born with it, you don't need it. And if you weren't born with it, you got to have it. Crooked smile, man, that's wild. How can you be so proud? So content. Don't you know that the only way to successfully make social media content, you've got to prove you can commit to an after that we all can admit doesn't look a bit like before. But don't worry, we'll be sure to remind you that you once had a crooked smile because that's wild. We didn't want you to keep it, yet we may down you for changing it. It all depends on our mood. Crooked smile, man, that's wild. I think I'll keep mine because what's wild is the confusion, the constant changes of disillusion. Crooked smile, man, that's wild. But I'll tell you, it feels good to be able to smile my crooked smile.
All right, all right, all right.
Awesome, awesome. Good. Then oftentimes when I hear that, I think the unrealistic expectations
Mm-hmm,
that their body image has shown up, especially when it comes to women, and
mm-hmm,
especially a thing like this, a culture that's not our own.
mm-hmm,
And so, yeah, to say that goes
mm-hmm.
back to what we were saying about, yeah, embracing all of who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
in
I mean,
terms
I
of
would
when,
say even for men, because there's a poem in that section called "Man in the Mirror" that I
hmm
wrote, and I also have a poem called "Call Me a Man" that was
hmm
inspired by how men are told you can't cry, you
right,
can't look weak. You
right,
can't tell a woman how much you love and need her because
hmm
then you're weak. You have to be the guy where if she walk out tomorrow, you good. But at the end of the day, that connection may have been there enough to break you, or you're not
hmm
expected to need people to be there for you. You lose a basketball game, you're told to suck it up, when all
hmm
you probably want is your mom or a coach or a male role model, whether it's your uncle or big cousin brother, to say, give you a hug, like, man, you didn't get it tonight, but you got it next time. Let's work on this or what have you. Or is this something you still even want to do? You're forced to just stick it out, tough it out, do it. So I don't think it's just on women. I think women is appearance, but men is the structure of being.
Yes.
who they're supposed to be. So, I mean, there is some physical that put on men as far as, are you tall enough? You know, you have a lot of women who say, I won't date a man who's under 6 feet. And it's like, okay, look, that's realistic, one. And two, you're 5'2". So you don't necessarily have to be with somebody who's 6 feet,
Yeah.
you know, or, you know, men who feel uncomfortable with losing their hair. I had a cousin who he's in his 20s. It's just hereditary. And I'm like, dude, just cut it off. And he just felt some type of way. And he's literally holding on to a bald fade that's faded to here. And, you
Mhm.
know, just not being able to embrace it because he doesn't want to be clowned or what people may look at. You know, it's just hits in so many different ways, even our hair. You know, how are you supposed to wear your hair? Can men have long hair, short hair, locks, kinks, whatever? You know, it's a wide array of things.
So a question on that. So when it came to men, I agree with you about that.
Mhm.
So would you say some of those expectations contribute to toxic masculinity?
So I won't say it's necessarily toxic masculinity. I think it's a case of where it's a focus on just one type of what makes a man.
Okay.
So many people want to put men in a box of what they can be to where
Mhm.
they are forced to strive to just what's in that box, and then people don't like what comes out of that. When you
Gotcha.
force a man to not express his emotions, unless it's anger or frustration, he can't tell you that he's struggling. He can't tell you that right now, you know, I need help with, you know, finding a job or whatever the case may be. What that then turns into is a man who's portraying a very image that people don't like. You're
Mhm.
overly aggressive, you're overly, so what else is their emotions going to come out as? He needs to go in a room and cry because his mother just passed away. And you're telling him
Mhm.
suck it up and get over it.
Mhm.
So of course, if he sucks it up, how is he gonna? That emotion has to go somewhere. I mean,
Right.
it's just the law of energy. It has to go somewhere. So if it can't come out in crime, if it can't come out in being by himself, if it can't come out in finding compassion, it's going to come out in anger. If he's frustrated, if it can't come out in let's have a talk and me be real with you, like this is really breaking me up,
Mhm.
it's going to come out in anger, or it's going to come out in him then telling another man, suck it up. I don't want to hear it. So, and then it's going to come in, he can't be gentle with a woman. If women don't give men a space to need to be gently handled,
Mhm.
then he can't then give her that back because all he has to give out is aggression, frustration, you know, all of that. So he can't
Mhm.
recognize when she needs it. He's like, you not even giving me time. I don't even have space to deal with it. So how can I deal with yours? You know, and then we're like, well, you don't want to be there for me. Well, you're not giving and taking. So I wouldn't necessarily say, you know, people throw around toxic masculinity so freely to where they're not, it's not really sometimes what that is. It's really you've
Mhm.
boxed this man in and then now you don't like the result of what that is.
Mhm.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Here with my co-host today, W.D. Foster Graham. He's the book review editor for Insight News, an author himself, and an advocate of us having a relationship with the written word and with creativity. We're talking to Tiara Nolen, Lady TCB, about her work, in particular, the work that is entitled uh, uh, Breaking Cycles, the full name Live to Grow, Breaking Cycles. And we're going to ask her to talk about the third element of that book, and that is Send Me In, Coach, in just a second. I'm going to do a station break, but before I do, I want to thank and shout out Marie Harris. Thank you for your comments. Marie Harris, thank you for watching, and invite you to make sure that you subscribe and share and like so that friends of yours can be with us here as well. Same thing with Joycelyn Basically. Joycelyn, thank you so much for your comment. You said that this testimony is a powerful, honest truth, and you sent a heart. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Thank you for our friend and supporter, Cameron, who's a regular, who greets us and our distinguished guests on a regular basis. Cameron, we thank you. We appreciate you. Let's do this quick sponsor note. We've got about a minute or two to wrap up, okay?
Sounds good.
Mhm.
Are you or someone you know recovering financially from the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown, or any other reason? If so, help is available. Findhelp.org is a site to find a wide range of resources, including food, medical care, and more. The best part is based on your zip code. Visit findhelp.org, enter your zip code and the service you need. You'll get a map directing you to the organizations that can help you. Help is waiting at findhelp.org. If you need help starting anew, findhelp.org is the site for you. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome back for the last part of the show here. Excited to be talking with Tiara Nolen, Lady TCB, a poet writing over 20 years, and just a lot of great things to say. We've gone over a couple of the movements in her book, and the third movement is Send Me In, Coach. Lady TCB, how about a piece from that segment of your book?
Yes. Say it one more time. Say it one more time. I could show you better than I could tell you. Say it one more time that you don't believe that I belong, pointing out just how much I stand out. You didn't have to use a slur or say it right out. It was the way you butchered my name, questioned my education, and inquired about my background, as if to fact check that I was truly authentic. Although even once proven true, that won't satisfy you. Your curiosity, as you may want to call it, is laced with low expectations and wrapped in a stereotypical disbelief that I can stand before you right now. You wonder if I've ever traveled outside the country, although this question isn't genuine. It's your way of gauging my wealth and opportunities afforded to me to see just how far this little colored girl has gone, seeing if my world has been expanded beyond the borders of this continent. You tell me that my name is hard to say, yet if before you read back-to-back consonants in a name as long as the alphabet, you'll rattle it off your tongue so fluidly, you may even attempt the accent from which the name descended. Yet you let me know you have a distaste for my name along your tongue. Foreign isn't what causes your disdain, for it must only be of a certain flavor to make your nose turn up and venom release from your mouth when my name exits out. No, do not ask to shorten my name or call me something else. Learn to say it and for sure how to spell it correctly. Do not equate my ability to succeed with your ability to pronounce my first or last name. Nor should you attempt to predict my longevity in comparison to your exposure with people who look like me. Baby, I'm unique, so don't try me, but if you dare, say it one more time on how rare it is that you see someone with hair like mine, that you never knew that I could speak that way, how you had that one friend that did that one thing, and now you wonder if we're all the same. Try it one more time when you attempt to relate by speaking in a way that is unnatural to you because you feel it's the only way I'll understand you, as if English wasn't my first language, too. Say it one more time. How it awed you to see that I could write at the college level. Trust, I have no patience for your foolishness. I'm seriously wondering who raised you. But then again, it doesn't matter because trust me, I plan to school you. I'm going to teach you, show you, better than I can just tell you. Today you'll learn I'm not the one. Not the one to be doubted, put down, or tried. And trust I'll do it all with a smile on my face. Because, say it one more time, and it'll be the last time you say it about me.
That's a throwdown. That's good. I love it.
Yes,
I love
yes.
it. So what is on the cartouche that you're wearing?
So actually, it is my name.
Mhm.
My aunt went to, I believe it was Israel about 15 years ago. And
Uh-huh.
so she came back and brought all of us a cartouche with our names on it. She didn't get the chain. She said, "You guys can get your own chains."
Uh-huh.
I went all the way over there. I got you your cartouche. So it is my name on it.
Okay. Did it create a curiosity in the language for you
Um,
in hieroglyphics? So you must have the first symbol must be a loaf of bread, then two feathered
yep.
reeds, then a mouth,
Hmm.
and then Egyptian eagle. That's how you
Yep.
spell tiara in
Yep.
hieroglyphics. Is that what
It
you
is.
got? Is that what's
Yeah,
on there?
that's what I have.
Okay. All right. All right.
There was some intrigue, but at the same time, I was like, this is an ancient language that,
Yeah.
you know. Take some time.
Okay, cool. Well, let me end with that to tell you thank you so much for being here. I can't believe this hour went by this fast.
No.
I mean,
It
it's just
did.
like that, So it just means we got to come back.
Yes.
And as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to have a conversation with WD about his family settling out his mom's estate. And you told us before that you've gone through the same thing with your family. And I think that'd be a great conversation. So would you come back?
Yes,
on that?
definitely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Lady TCB, Tiara Nolen. Thank you so much.
So much.
WD, thank you.
One thing.
Yes.
Where can we buy your books?
There we go.
So you can find the book on Amazon.com. You could also reach out to me via my Facebook page, which is under Shadows of Poetry, because that's another way that I offer to get individual poetry pieces by print. So you can message me there or via my Instagram link to get the direct link if you want it to come from me directly with an autographed copy. Otherwise, as I said, it's available on Amazon and also on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can read my books for free, or you could purchase them as well.
Awesome. Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much.
Thank
WD,
you.
thank you. And our listeners and viewers, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Have a great one.
Bye.